Welcome to the Cinema Club podcast. I'm your host, Nick Leach, and I'm so excited to have you guys on for this episode. The Cinema Club is like a book club, but for movies. Every other week, I invite one member of the Cinema Club to be my co-host for that week, who will choose the movie of the week and join me on the podcast to talk about the film. This week, we have a very special film to talk about. It is Edgar Wright's awesome film, Baby Driver. I'm so excited to talk about this film with our co-host of the week, Kevin Cernitsky. He chose the movie of the week, and I'm so excited for us to talk about it. And also, we're joined by an actor friend of mine, Connor Gurney, and he's also a part of the Cinema Club. And we're going to get into it, so with that, enjoy the episode.
Shop, let's talk it. The target is an armored truck at Perimeter Trust, 10 a.m. sharp. Bank is right next to it. The switch card, baby, hit the long stay parking structure, start in the a.m. Questions?
I got a question, Doc. Why would I believe phones over here heard the goddamn word you said? He ain't even listening.
Baby? The target is an armored truck at Perimeter Trust in Dunwoody, 10 a.m. sharp. The switch car is ready, but you want me to hit the long stay parking structure and get a heist vehicle that stays colder longer? It needs to be ready for an 8:30 start. Questions?
You've been my driver for every job since we met. You're the best in the business. I'm gonna need you behind the wheel again.
One more job and I'm done.
One more job, and we're straight.
Hey, baby.
Why is he listening to music all the time?
He had an accident when he was a kid.
He's got mental problems?
I'm the one got the mental problems in the crew. Position taken.
What is your name?
Baby.
Your name's Baby. B-A-B-Y, baby.
In this business, the moment you catch feelings is the moment you catch a bullet.
You are my lucky charm, and I'm not doing this job without you. Your waitress girlfriend, she's cute. Let's keep it that way.
I have to drive again. It's not what I want.
And what do you want?
To get out of here.
You want it?
I'm in, baby.
We are 24 hours from being descended upon by this entire city.
Have you been talking about us?
Supposed to squeal on the road, not to the cops.
We're getting out. I have to end this.
What's happening, baby?
That's some Oscar shit right there.
Get out of the car.
Oh, my purse!
I'm sorry, ma'am.
And just to be completely clear, before we get any further, I just want to give a huge spoiler warning because we are going to be talking about the whole entire plot of the film. So if you haven't watched the film, go ahead and go and watch that right now before we get into the film. This week, I'm super excited to be talking about Baby Driver, and I've got two awesome guests on board with me. The first is my co-host this week who has picked the movie. Thanks for coming on, Kevin.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Now, why don't you introduce yourself to the podcast? Tell everybody kind of who you are, what you do.
Currently living out here in Raleigh, doing some real estate photography. Just super happy to be here. Wanted to talk about Baby Driver. Looking for an excuse to watch a movie again. It's such a good movie, in my opinion. I haven't seen it too many times, to be honest, but like it's just something that really stuck with me, you know?
And our special guest this week is an actor friend of mine. It is Connor Gurney. Thank you for coming on, Connor.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Yeah, like Nick said, I'm an actor, and obviously there's not a whole lot of acting opportunities going on during COVID and everything going on right now because I'm specifically involved in the theater and live performance. So I've been finding different ways of entertaining myself and still making money. So that's what I've been up to. And I've seen Baby Driver like I feel like 5 or 6 times. So I'm super excited to talk about it.
And before we get actually into the nitty gritty of the film, I just want to ask Kevin, why did you choose Baby Driver for the Cinema Club podcast? Out of all the movies you could have picked, why is it Baby Driver that you wanted to share with our club?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said before, it's not a movie I've seen too many times. I've seen it a handful of times, sure. It just really stuck with me when I first saw it, though, back in 2017 when it first premiered. The editing was great. The characters were great. I loved the soundtrack. You know, the entire movie really just kind of plays to the soundtrack, and it does it so well. So it's a great movie in my opinion, and something that's just really, you know, it lives in my head rent free, you know?
So let's get into it. Baby Driver is directed by Edgar Wright. It has a running time of 1 hour, 55 minutes. So a little bit on the long side, but still, it doesn't feel like that. It's so quick paced and you get through it real quickly. It has a 92 on Rotten Tomatoes, and I cannot disagree with that. It is such a good movie. It well deserving of that 92 on Rotten Tomatoes. It starts with Baby, a getaway driver in Atlanta. As a child, he survived a car crash which killed his parents and left him with tinnitus. He finds catharsis in music. Baby ferries crews of robbers assembled by Doc, a criminal mastermind, to pay off a debt Baby incurred when he unknowingly stole a car containing Doc's stolen goods. Between jobs, he remixes snippets of recorded conversations and cares for his deaf foster father, Joseph. At Bo's Diner, he also meets a waitress named Deborah, and they start dating. Before we get into the story bit of this, I just want to talk about the director, Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time because all of his films are just so stylized. He is such a master editor and director. I mean, I would kind of consider him to be in the same category as like Wes Anderson. If you watch a film by his, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, you can tell that it's an Edgar Wright movie. Everything is so well edited. It is quick cuts. The soundtrack, especially in this film, is everything. I mean, he cuts it to the beat. For me, his editing, it has a musicality to it. It has a rhythm, and it is shown so expertly through this film especially.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You know, Edgar Wright, he's such a great filmmaker. One of the movies, you know, those both Hot Fuzz, you know, both those are great. I saw Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and that was one movie that I really liked, you know, back when I first saw it a long time ago. And that's also great to me, just the editing and everything in that one. But yeah, the soundtrack in this film, like, it's very important to the pacing of the film, I think. But yeah, the soundtrack, it really is just integral to the pacing of this film. And he does a lot with it too, in the sense of like foreshadowing and getting inside the characters' heads. Like, you get to really understand where Baby is at in his head, depending on like the music that's playing. You get a feel of the situation for the song that's being played at any given moment. The editing in this film really is great, and you can tell it's an Edgar Wright film, you know, very easily.
I think one thing I like most about Edgar Wright is he is always showing things rather than having the characters tell you what's going on. Like every second he can, he's showing, like, even if it's just getting a cup of coffee, or it's how they start the car, or it's them putting on the masks before they go into the bank robbery. He always shows these iconic images rather than explaining to you what he's going to do.
What's so amazing, and I actually had to look at a script. I found it online and was able to kind of look at it because I kind of like to reference that when I really enjoy a film and really want to get into it. And what's so interesting is that in the first 6 minutes, really 6 pages of the entire script, there is not one line of dialogue that is spoken. The first 6 minutes are just a car scene. There is maybe some chatter, but the real kind of like story points in lines is coming through the music lyrics. It's the lyrics really show what is happening in the scene and the story and really drive it forward. And Edgar Wright just so awesomely and so expertly weaves in not only the lyrics, but weaves in character points in the action. And one thing I also wanted to note about the entire movie is that to me, the entire movie is really broken down into two separate categories. You have the chase scenes and you have all the other scenes. And what's so awesome about the chase scenes is that most of the entire story and even the introduction of the characters happens during the chase scenes, during the action, not the other. The others are kind of they help to inform the decisions of the characters, but they don't show the action or they don't show the choices that the character is making as much as they do in those chase scenes.
Yeah. And to kind of go off of that, it does sort of feel like two different movies almost, with the chase scenes, and then you have everything else like you just said. Like the chase scenes, they're very fast and high energy, and there are tons of cuts in between them. I think that in the first car chase there was like over 100 different cuts that were made, which was insane to me. I love that. And then you have everything else afterwards too, like with Debbie. You really feel it there, that it's like this very different tone and almost this different movie too, because like those shots, the shots in those scenes, they're very long and, very, wide sweeping shots of just the two of them talking and everything. So it's great.
Now, I did want to point out two things. The first thing is, this is maybe my fifth or sixth time watching Baby Driver. There was a lot that I really picked up this viewing that I hadn't seen before. And the first thing I saw was in the title montage, that is that one long take, that oneer where he's dancing through the streets and goes to the coffee shop and picks up coffee for the team, is there are so many little details that you can pick up just in that scene alone. I mean, I won't spoil it for anybody that hasn't seen it and wants to go back and see it. But the next time you watch it, look at the graffiti and listen to the lyrics that are happening. I mean, that's just one of many of the little details happening just in that scene alone. And it just goes to show how masterfully this film was written, created, and everything about it is just so thought out.
Yeah, it's unreal, the timing in that scene, that it's all one shot and how everything lines up perfectly down to the second. And it's really great to rewatch that scene and really be paying attention to things in the background and stuff. It's unbelievable.
The stunts and the driving are flawlessly done. There's some stunt work and especially driving work I've never seen in any other film before. I mean, you have the cut maneuver that they do with the three red cars in that scene, but there's also some crane shots that happen that as they're drifting around, I mean, the camera is just right, like almost about to be hit at times. But the one little stunt I wanted to point out is there's a mistake. And it's the only mistake I could find in the film, really. And it's in the first car chase in the alley where there's some trucks that are backing up and the car kind of does this spin drift. And when he starts the first drift and he goes around that first truck trailer is a CG truck trailer, because if you look real close, the car actually goes straight through it.
I did not notice that.
I have to shout out a YouTube channel, Corridor Digital. They're how I learned about that. But after I heard about it, I couldn't unsee it this time through. Well, moving forward, Baby's next robbery goes awry after an armed bystander chases them down. But Baby evades him and the police. Having paid his debt, Baby quits his life of crime and starts delivering pizzas. Doc interrupts Baby's date with Deborah and insists he joins a post office heist, threatening to hurt Deborah and Joseph should he refuse. One note I wanted to make about just this section, but also the entire film, is an idea that plays throughout the entire film is the fact that Baby, his morality is the most important thing to him. He is opposed to violence, and that's why in a couple different scenes and a couple different robberies, he doesn't look at what's happening. He doesn't look at the crime scenes. In the first bank heist, he doesn't really look over. I mean, he looks over and sees that they're robbing the bank, but he looks straight back and just goes straight into his music, trying to ignore what's happening. In this section, when they go and they rob the armored truck, he drives the car forward so that he doesn't have to see the guard getting killed, and then he drives back and he sees that the guard has been killed. But he's very opposed to violence, and even when Bats is about to shoot a Good Samaritan, he makes sure that Bats doesn't shoot the guy, the innocent guy that's just trying to help. His morality is most important to him. What we learn later later is his morality that actually ends up acquitting him in the end, really.
Yeah, definitely. I made a note about that too, and that's something that that's very apparent throughout the film. His sense of morality, how much he's different compared to the other criminals. He's really forced into this kind of life. Yeah, you can tell he doesn't want to be in this life. It's not really meant for him. And one thing that I really like too is his relationship with all of the other kind of criminals in this gang, especially Buddy. Like, he doesn't really get along with most anyone else except, I would say, for Buddy, I guess, because Buddy's the only one that actually takes a liking to him. They actually kind of connect, and Buddy can see that Baby doesn't belong here. He tells him, next time Doc calls you, don't pick up, and all that. And yeah, he really doesn't belong here. And his sense of his morals, his moral compass, everything that he does, he's saving the Good Samaritan, the soldier boy, as Jamie Foxx's character calls him, giving the elderly woman her purse back when he, jacks her car, shaking his head at the teller, before she goes into the bank, before the second heist, I think. I don't know. It's all very important, later on in the film, when he gets his sentence shortened, I think, that parole after the 5 years. So it definitely is very important. And it's great to see.
Another really interesting thing that is a subtle little thing, but it really plays to the subconscious is Baby's wardrobe. Even it's that black and white coat that he's wearing in so many of the scenes that really shows where he's at. The rest of the team are usually dressed in black almost completely, or all one color in the case of Bats wearing pretty much all red. The rest of them also wear really dark clothes, like I was saying, but Baby wears a black and white jacket, and that just goes to show kind of the mixed morality that he has, but also the fact that he's playing into this darker world, this world of crime, but he's also just keeping one step out of that at the same time. But also when he goes and he spends time in his own house with Joseph, almost all of the scenes with Joseph where he's by himself, when he's in his actual real world, he takes that jacket off and he has a white shirt underneath. So it shows that in those cases, he isn't struggling with his morality. He doesn't have to go against his morals, or he can be his true self, which is a morally good person.
Yeah, I think the colors of the characters are really interesting beyond just Baby too, because like you said, Bats has this red color almost in every scene. They play around with it a bit when they actually are doing criminal acts, but when they're just hanging out, because Buddy's got usually a bluish color around him. I honestly cannot remember the girl's name.
Oh, no, she is my darling.
Yeah. That's right. And she's always got kind of this mauve, pink vibe going on. And I really think it helps, again, with the showing of story and character through visuals rather than words. He goes back to that color in every scene, which I think is really cool. And it plays again when towards the end of the movie which I won't jump ahead too far, but with Buddy at the end, he comes back with his colors of blues, and the reds come back in, which I think is really awesome. But we'll get there.
When the crew attempts to purchase illegal firearms, Bats recognizes one of the dealers as an undercover cop and opens fire. They kill most of the dealers. Afterwards, Bats makes Baby stop at Deborah's diner, unaware of Baby and Deborah's romance. Baby, aware of Bats' homicidal habits, stops him from killing her to avoid paying for his dinner. So before we get any further, I just really want to get into this scene with the butcher, the arms dealer, because to me, this was my favorite scene of the entire movie because of the editing. If you listen to the soundtrack and you actually look at the action beats time perfectly to the soundtrack. Every gunshot matches to a beat. Every little movement matches to the soundtrack. Everything in that scene to me is perfect, and it plays almost like a music video to me, and it's so good.
Yeah, and when they get to the end and it's right on time with the very end of the song, yeah, it's just It's really clean. It's awesome.
You got a lot of really good character moments too in there that kind of show you the crew's dynamic. There's one clip, there's one shot I love a lot, and it's really small and probably doesn't really matter a whole hell of a lot. But there's when Buddy and Darling, they're together and they're shooting at the cops and everything. Buddy, he goes to Darling and he literally cocks her gun before she takes fire. And I don't know, it's just little quirks like that I just really like a lot. They're really quick, but they're really characterful.
But what's also really important about this arms deal is the fact that up to this point, we have basically just been following Baby. Everything that we see is through the eyes of Baby. What Baby sees, we see. What Baby doesn't see, what he chooses not to see, we as the audience do not see. But that changes right here. We actually start to see some of the things that are happening because we see Bats, Buddy, and Darling, and it shows that Baby's world at this point is falling apart. Up to this point, Baby has had so much control over his life, but at this point, it's slipping away, and we see that happen when he comes to the diner too. When Bats forces him to go into the diner that Deborah is working at, he has no control over his situation anymore, and it's from this point forward that the entire rest of the movie, his control is taken away, and things start happening to Baby rather than Baby doing those actions.
I made the exact same note. Yeah, it was at that scene where you noticed that, it did feel off. The camera stopped following Baby. It was now we actually had this different perspective with these three other characters. So yeah, I made the exact same observation. I thought that was great.
After the botched arms deal, Doc is furious, revealing that the dealers were dirty cops on his payroll. He decides to cancel the heist, but the crew overrule him. Baby attempts to slip away late that night, hoping to take Deborah and leave Atlanta. He's stopped by Buddy and Bats, who have discovered his recordings, and they believe he's an informant. When they and Doc hear his mixtapes, they are convinced he is innocent.
I was just going to say something that I wanted to bring up just as kind of a conversation starter is, what do you guys think of Deborah's character? Because I've heard, depending on who you talk to, what their opinion on her is. And for me personally, I'll just start off by saying I think it's really interesting the way that some people criticize her for not having much character. Like, it's mostly tied to, I'm going to run away with Baby. Like, that's her whole deal. But at the same time, I think, like what Nick's been saying this whole time, is that since so much of the movie is so tied to Baby's point of view and Baby's mind, he views her as being like an adolescent man. Like, he views her as this escape. And so that's what she is within the context of the film.
I was going to talk about this too later on for sure. Debbie's character was something that I more or less had some grievances with. Mainly the believability, I guess, of this character. I love her a lot. She's great. But I don't know how believable it is. You go on a date with this one girl, you fall in love instantly, and then, the next second, I want to run away with you. Let's go to Mexico or something. It's like, I do have some theories about it. Talking back earlier with all the mixtapes and everything, there was the one tape labeled Mom. I kind of got the sense that Baby more or less saw his mom in Debbie. And that's kind of why he was very attached to her, especially little tidbits, oh, my mom used to work here at the same time that she's at and everything. I think there's some very distinct visual similarities between them as well. And the singing too. I don't remember. Does Baby make a mixtape of Deborah's voice? If you listen later on, you also notice the mixtape he made of his mom's voice. That's not edited in any sort of distorted way. And I love that because one, it points out, I think it symbolizes the purity of his mother to him. And I think it just kind of you can draw parallels between him and his mom and Debbie, and you can understand why he's doing this for her, I think. I don't know if I'm reaching at all here, because, but I do think there are similarities between Debbie and his mom. But it's Debbie and Baby's relationship I'm not totally sure if I buy. So I was going to ask you guys later on, like, how you felt about that.
So I agree with both of you completely, but how I see Debbie, it's not as if Debbie's character doesn't matter as much, or her character development doesn't matter, because it's her role that matters in the story, not who she is particularly. And I can understand why people would have some grievances with that, but to me, it works really well. And for the story to work, Debbie's past and Debbie's character development is not supposed to work, because her role in the story is to serve as that go-between and in-between, and fill that void that Baby has in his heart, because his mom was taken from him at an early age. Because we don't see this happen with Baby's dad, because Baby's dad was taken away completely at the same time as his mom in that car accident. But that doesn't matter. He tries to find these father figures in his life that are there, whether that be Joseph or whether that be Doc even. He tries to find some. But it's Debbie that stays and is his constant and is his kind of tether to his past and fills that void that his mom left behind. I mean, his mom was a singer, and the first thing that he's drawn to is Debbie's voice. His mom was the only person who could take care of him and watch over him. And that's what Debbie did. I mean, she even waited for him after he got out of jail. And the one real little subtle detail that really ties it together for me is only shot that is in black and white in this film is the shot of him kind of fantasizing that Debbie is going to be waiting for him outside of a classic car and dressed up in a very 1950s kind of look to her. She's kind of that perfect housewife that he kind of fantasizes because his mom was gone. So somebody that is a foster child that hasn't had a mom, he's going to look to those things around him that are going to fill that void. And one thing that also comes through, and it's another little detail, is all the films and TV that he watches that he quotes throughout the entire thing. You see early scenes of movies happening near the beginning of the film that he does direct quotes when he's talking to people later on in the film. And so it is that idyllic fantasy of a 1950s life that he wants and that he fantasizes for him and Debbie. In the end, it's because of his mom being gone and not having that maternal figure in his life that he places Debbie in that situation to fill that hole that he has.
You really get the impression that Baby really just more or less despises his dad, I guess, more or less, for everything that he did to him as a kid, all the abuse that maybe not directly towards Baby or anything, but, all the fighting that his parents did. Because when Baby and Debbie are talking, I think either at the diner or at the laundromat, I can't recall which location it was, Baby is telling her about his parents, plural, both of his mom and dad, and how, they died in a car accident. And, Baby just talks about his mom, and he's just like, I miss her. There's nothing about his dad, which, you get to, Baby's mom is like so key to his character. So that's one thing I wanted to say from earlier, for sure.
I mean, you also see it in his relationship with the rest of the people on the crew. I mean, he may have a connection with Buddy, but he has more of a connection with Darlene. Darlene really kind of looks at him as a little kid and kind of really cares for him. And in the same turn, he kind of cares for her. I mean, when she dies, he feels really bad about that. And especially with Buddy, when they're in that diner scene in the end, he's so apologetic to Buddy and trying to make it right. And the same goes with Deborah and the rest of the women in his life. Whereas he doesn't have that with the men. He kind of stays closed off to the rest of the men because he didn't have a good relationship with his father. The father's not the person that he connected with as a kid. And the person that he did connect with is his mom, and he lost her.
I see what you mean, because Darling is protective of him, is what I feel like it is specifically. Whereas Buddy isn't mean to him, but he lets him do his own thing and doesn't really lift a finger to protect him. But Darling actually has quite a few lines where she's like, hey, leave him alone, guys. He's just a kid. Don't bother him. And that does have a whole connection with his mom and with Deborah as well.
I think so. I can totally see what the point is there with Darling and Baby. I do like, though, that, you do get these character moments between Buddy and Baby, especially early on, I think after the first heist or around that point, I forgot when it was, that, they're listening to the same track and they're talking about music with each other. And it's just a really nice moment, I think, between the two of them. Like, they kind of connect with each other. And I don't know, I feel like at that moment, like, maybe Baby could have seen Buddy as somewhat as like a fatherly figure.
Yeah. And there's that funny line that I think draws your attention to it as an audience member when they're in the elevator and John Bernthal's character is like, hey, what do you think of that? Mommy and Daddy getting it on? Or he says something to that effect. And that draws attention to us as an audience, like, oh, like Baby is looking for a mom and a dad, like in everybody he's around. And so like even subconsciously, like you're kind of like searching for that mother and father for him too as you watch the movie, which I think is really cool.
So during the heist, Bats kills a security guard. Disgusted, Baby refuses to drive away, causing Bats to hit him. Baby rams the car into rebar, which impales Bats, killing him. The remaining three flee on foot. While Darling is killed in a shootout with police, Buddy blames Baby for her death and vows to kill him. Baby steals a car and flees to his apartment. He leaves Joseph at an assisted living home with his heist earnings, then rushes to Bose for Deborah, where Buddy is waiting. Baby shoots Buddy and flees with Deborah as police reinforcements swarm the restaurant.
So I do like that Buddy kind of turns into the final antagonist of the film. Jamie Foxx's character is a lot of fun, and I like him too, but I think it's probably a bit more thematic that it's Buddy instead. There are some parallels between Buddy, Darling, and Baby and Debbie. I think that, maybe in another life, maybe Baby could have turned into Buddy if he made different choices. But I do think it's fun that, it's Buddy who ends up being the final antagonist of the film.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what was so touching in the film was that relationship and that love that Buddy and Darling have for each other. It is a ride or die kind of love. It is a Bonnie and Clyde type of relationship. It is I will go with you till the end, no matter if we're going to go out in a blaze of glory. And that's what happens. Darling ends up getting shot because she's trying to protect her love, her man, and that then when she is taken out of the picture, that was also the only thing holding Buddy together. And that's when he changes, he flips, he blames Baby for her death rather than seeing it as her trying to protect Baby, who she had a real good connection with, almost a maternal connection with. She was the only thing holding him back from that rage that was within him, which she even talked about earlier in the film to Bats. Don't tick him off. When he sees red, that's all he sees.
Yeah, there was a lot of foreshadowing, I think, that kind of like hinted at Buddy being the final villain of the film. With what you said earlier about with Darling, the whole exchange between Darling and Bats, to make him angry or else he's going to see red, and then all that you're going to see will be just nothing but black. Which it feels there's a lot of foreshadowing throughout most of the film, especially whenever Baby was watching TV. There was one program that he listened to very briefly that I really liked. It was when he was watching TV with Joseph back in their apartment, and it was the Bull and the Matador program. There was one line that I feel like most people could have maybe, glanced right past it. It was, I have a note right here, the bull is bloodied and unrelenting. Gaston is running out of time. He's had his tries on horseback, and now he needs to end it on foot. And that's exactly what happens, later on in the final showdown in the parking garage with, Baby and Buddy. And, if you notice too, I think it's really interesting, the cars that they're driving. Buddy, I think, is in a Dodge Charger, and Baby's in a Dodge Challenger. And, it's a good like metaphor, I guess, because, Buddy is this raging, charging bull, especially, and, he's seeing red at this point. The inside of the cop car is red, and the red light's just flooding over his character. And, we got Baby here, he's challenging him essentially. And I don't know, I just think it's really cool. I like all the foreshadowing, the metaphors, and the ultimate culmination of all of that.
I wanted to talk about Joseph too. Joseph is such an awesome character in this entire film. The really only comment I have for Joseph is just the fact that number one, I love the character, but I also love what the representation of this character. And I want to say it as a note to kind of call back to last week's film, Sound of Metal, giving the deaf and hearing impaired community such a platform. But this film also is such a nice platform for the deaf community. And I think it's such a great thing to have in this because this film is so audio heavy, yet we're bringing a character that cannot experience it. And also the fact that Baby has tinnitus, and that's the only reason like he has music playing all the time is because otherwise all he would be hearing is a ringing in his ear. And so I think that was really cool that Edgar Wright uses a disability as a plot point. So at the safe house, Doc refuses Baby's plea for help, but relents when he sees Deborah consoling him, saying he was in love once too. Doc supplies them with cash and escape route out of the country. The police who survived the arms deal confront the three in the parking garage, but Doc kills them all. Buddy ambushes them and kills Doc. A cat and mouse game ensues until Buddy has Baby at his mercy. He fires next to both of Baby's ears, bursting his eardrums and temporarily deafening him. But the distraction allows Deborah to hit Buddy with a crowbar. Baby shoots him in the leg and Buddy falls to his death. So here's another point, Kevin, that I really want to bring up here. The fact of Deborah being so actually integral to this story. Because Baby is the protagonist of the film, the traditional character of a protagonist is the one of the hero. In this point, Baby is not the hero. His hearing is taken away from him, and it is Deborah here that then steps in and takes over and saves the day. She is not a damsel in distress, and she is the one who can take control and take care of Baby, and it is actually the one then who takes, again, that maternal role throughout the entire rest of the film to take care of Baby, to get him out of that situation, to drive him away, and they drive off together. It is only because of Deborah that he's able to go on from the point of his hearing going away, that thing that has brought him to this point. The reason he's so obsessed with music is because not only does he have a hearing impairment with the tinnitus, but also because it connects him to his mother too.
I do like that Debbie does stand up and save Baby. I think that was incredible. She wasn't a damsel in distress. To be honest, I don't really think she ever really was, I suppose, except for in the diner, I guess, when maybe Buddy was, holding her at hostage with the gun and everything. Maybe at that point I can see that. But really, you never really got the impression that she was much of a damsel in distress, I thought anyway. But yeah, I think it really feeds into also the similarities between Debbie and Baby's mom, that Debbie will be there to protect Baby, that, she will take care of him. She will do what she needs to. So yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, something else about this section is, what do you guys think about one of my few things in the movie that I'm like, I don't know, is Kevin Spacey's character Doc, when he decides to essentially sacrifice himself. Kevin Spacey's sacrifice essentially for Deborah and Baby feels so melodramatic compared to, even though the whole rest of the movie is, but that moment, what do you guys think about that moment?
But can I argue that the entire movie is unreal? There is not really one moment of the film that could feel real. What I consider this movie to be really is a world in and of itself. It is a cinematic universe from the first frame to the end of the frame. To me, it doesn't feel believable throughout the entire thing. Like you have said multiple times here, does it feel believable? No, but that doesn't matter to me, at least, because it's about the themes that are happening. It is about the characters and looking at one character in particular, because let's be real. Baby's entire experience is not one that is based in reality. He doesn't hear the world around him. He escapes into a universe of music, and the entire film is just that. It is an escape from reality. And so to me, that moment that Kevin Spacey sacrifices himself, yeah, it's melodramatic, but that's Baby's life. He's obsessed with character tropes. He's obsessed with TV and film. He basically, whether or not Deborah is this character that's a real character to him, in his mind, not really, because he idolizes her from the moment he first sees her walking outside that coffee shop. He records her voice, but when he listens to her voice, it's with a distorted echo to it. It is not a real kind of voice. And so in my opinion, does it really matter if it helps to drive the story forward, if it's real or not? I don't know.
I guess not. That was one thing I noticed too. Kevin Spacey's just like willingness to help them as soon as he saw Debbie. I mean, you got the impression that, he saw himself in Baby there when, Deborah came on out. I thought it was a little, it was show don't tell, basically. I thought right there, like you can draw the connection. And honestly, to me, that was enough. I think I didn't really need anything more than that. I think they probably went I think it was probably a moment that was probably undercut by him literally saying, I was in love once in the elevator, but it's not necessarily all that believable, but it, like what Nick was saying, it doesn't really need to be. And for what it was, I think it was enough. Yeah, I'm okay with it.
I think also what you've made me think about is how part of Baby's ideology is how love is all powerful. And part of one of the lessons of the whole movie is how love saves you, basically. And if you don't have love, like Buddy lost his love, you're gone and it's over with and you're lost. Or you could be.
And in Doc's case too, Doc said he was in love once and then couple moments later he's dead.
So this metaphor of how love is healing all throughout the movie, and that goes back to the moment with Deborah saving Baby. Again, it's love conquering all, and love is what conquers, air quotes, his prison sentence, even because of his compassion and his love. And it is like I was saying, and you were saying, melodramatic, how over the top the metaphor is, but it's over the top, you're right, on purpose to really get it across to us as an audience and for us to see how Baby sees it as so important.
So after fleeing, the couple are stopped by a police roadblock, forcing Baby to surrender. At Baby's trial, Joseph, Deborah, and other people affected by Baby's crimes testify in his defense, citing his acts of compassion and mercy. He's sentenced to 25 years in prison, subject to a parole hearing after 5 years. Deborah stays in contact with Baby, whose real name is revealed to be Miles, during his incarceration, and she waits for him with a newly purchased vintage car when they are reunited and they start a new life. So again, we go back to the overriding theme of this movie, which is morality. During the entire thing, Baby's character does not lose his morals. Never does he let that come in the way of what he does. And that's what in the end gets his sentence shortened. Like you pointed out, Connor, earlier, I mean, when he's in that chase and steals that car from that black lady, he gives her his purse. Like you said, Kevin, when he's outside that post office, he tells the teller not to go in. And because of that, they come to his defense. And that's really what gets him out of almost a life sentence, really. He would lost so many years in jail that he could be with Deborah. And because of his morality, because of his moral compass, because of his character, his sentence is commuted or shortened, and he's able then to actually live out those years with the women that he does love.
This is an ending that I really enjoy, especially because it does, with all the things, everything that Baby has done up until this moment, he never lost his morality once, I'd say. All of his good deeds really came back in his favor, and I just love it when there's that kind of payoff in stories like this. Choices matter. Choices, lead to one thing and then to another thing afterwards. I think it's great. I really do like the ending a lot. Let me see. Checking my notes really fast. And the final heist too, like you got a sense that everything was going to be more or less okay, I think. Back to what I was saying earlier with the foreshadowing and everything, there was a on the radio, they were listening to the weather report, I think, and it said mostly cloudy today, tomorrow mostly sunny. And that's one thing I really liked a lot. And like, you know, in the end, when you have Debbie there waiting for baby out the gates, you know, you see a rainbow in the background. And if you remember earlier, Debbie, I want to say it was Debbie, she said, she quoted a song, I think from Dolly Parton, that was like, oh, you can't have a rainbow without a little rain. And I don't know, I really like that. It's a really good ending to me. You know, choices, everything that they did mattered. Well, baby did mattered. He got rewarded for not losing his moral compass, which he very easily, I think, could have lost. So yeah, I thought it was great.
And also what's a really cool callback right here is that last shot of Debbie and that car, and it starts in black and white as if he's imagining from his prison cell of that ideal future that he wants for himself. But then it shifts from black and white to colored. And it is revealed to us that that life that he imagined for himself, that he so wished for, it became a reality because of that morality that brings him then out of it to this ideal future and this imagined future that he wanted for himself.
Yeah, something that I think, especially the first time I watched this movie, that scene really sticks with you because it stands out so much as such a confirmation of the metaphor that has been kind of under the surface of the whole movie. And I think one of the reasons why, for me personally, I kept going back and watching it again is because Edgar Wright really made this movie a myth rather than just a story in the way that he tells it and enforces morals and talks about characters and the downfall of good people and the rise of good people. And he's really created a modern myth with it, which doesn't happen often in movies these days. You notice when a movie does that to you and really affects something. It's almost like spiritual in a way that he talks about these morals.
Yeah, I would almost compare it more to a parable than a myth. A parable being a little bit more biblical and really coming with a key theme and a lesson to be taught at the end of it.
One random thing real quick is the title of the movie, I think, is really cool. The fact that it's tied to the Simon and Garfunkel song and all of that. I wanted to hear maybe just a quick thought from you guys about that, because I'm sure you've thought about it. It's one of those songs that almost feels like Edgar Wright was possibly writing the movie with the song in mind, which I think is really interesting whenever somebody do that, like art imitating each other. But yeah, and also just the metaphor again of the family and driving and what drives you as a person, and the metaphor of driving throughout, and baby being driven towards family. It makes me think of that book, like Are You My Mother? Like the little picture book. That's what it says to me.
I didn't really think about it too much, to be honest, Connor, until I looked up the lyrics actually just right now. There are a lot of parallels to it, but I don't think enough to really be like, it's based on the song completely. The Baby Driver, the song, the lyrics talk a lot about driving and being free on the road. But there's one little line in here that I thought is really interesting. It's, when I was young, I carried a gun, but I never got the chance to serve. I did not serve. In that, he's talking, the lyrics, or Simon Garfunkel is talking right before that about his mama was in the Naval Reserve. But then when I carried a gun, I never got the chance to serve. I did not serve. I think that there's a really good parallel just to that line to the morality of Baby in this film. He doesn't want to skimp on his morals. He doesn't want to go against that moral code. And a lot of that has to do with his mother. I think there's definitely some parallels and some inspiration that came from the song. Definitely. I mean, just out of that, but I think I would have to have a little bit more time to think about it to really drive and gain those parallels if I didn't have just a couple moments of looking up the lyrics here.
Yeah, me too. I think honestly, I'm looking at the lyrics too as we're talking about it. I don't know. I could see Baby as kind of like this man-child in a way. I guess it's one way to describe him, and maybe that could be why it's called Baby Driver. He was, the way he dresses and everything, and the shoes he wears specifically, not that they're childish or anything, but, they're not really like, the most adultish thing. They're just like Converse, but, all the goofing around he does in the car, how he's kind of like lost in his own world, I think. I don't know. I need to think about the song also. I need some more time to mull it over.
Well, it's because his life did end when he was little. His life stopped as he was a child. And I know a lot of people that have been through the foster system, a lot of people also that are orphaned or have lost a parent at a young age. When something that tragic happens to you, if you have tragedy in your life at a young age, it's really hard to grow up from that point in your life. It's hard to escape that moment in your life. And so I think you're right, Kevin. He is a child because he cannot help that, because his life did stop at that moment in time where his mother died, and he can't escape that.
Yeah, definitely. I don't doubt that, it's hard for people to overcome that kind of trauma and to grow past it. So I can totally see that as part of his character for sure. So it's very believable.
Yeah, I definitely didn't have any kind of full insight on the song, even though I've had the album. I downloaded the album right after I saw the movie the first time, and I've listened to it countless times. And it's still, every once in a while, I'll just hear it's an emotion or a feeling that's in that song that reminds me of the plot of the movie. And it's definitely not a word for word kind of relation in any way, but he does a great job at relating the tone of the movie, and especially the ending of the movie, to the song. Yeah.
Before we go, I just want to first say thank you guys so much for coming on the episode. And before we go, I want to hear your guys' final thoughts, final reviews, what you liked, if you disliked the film, or if you would recommend it for people to go watch if they haven't seen it already.
Definitely liked it a lot. I would recommend it. Like I said earlier, I haven't seen the movie too many times, a handful for sure, but this is definitely one of the movies that I like a lot. I'd definitely recommend it. The editing, the soundtrack, the characters, the story, it's all very good. I got a few grievances here and there, but at the end of the day, those grievances don't really matter a whole hell of a lot. It's still a great movie and a great story and everything. So yeah, definitely recommend it. If you haven't seen it, go check it out.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, any problem or any questions you have while you're watching the movie, don't really add up or affect the movie negatively, because it transports you entirely. And I would highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite movies, and it's even top in my list of Edgar Wright movies, which is those are some hard competition to fight against. So, but it still even is in the top of those. So I would highly recommend this movie.
Absolutely. I'm with you guys completely here. I am a huge Edgar Wright fan. And like I said, right at the beginning of this, I consider his films to be in the same vein as stylistically as Wes Anderson. They're so different, and they feel so different than any other films out there, and especially Baby Driver. Baby Driver is a film that Edgar Wright spent years and years and years making. He wanted to make it even before he even did Hot Fuzz or even Shaun of the Dead. It was one of the first films that he wanted to make. It just took him a while. It is also so different in style and scope than any of the other Edgar Wright movies. Most of the other ones are extremely stylized. I mean, Scott Pilgrim, very stylized, or Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead, almost straight comedies. But Baby Driver is such an epic, like we said. It is such a parable of a film, and plays with your emotions, plays with morality, plays with ideas of what is right and wrong, and I think is such a masterpiece of a film. And to me, Baby Driver is my favorite of Edgar Wright's films. So thank you so much, Kevin, for suggesting this film and for choosing it to share with the Cinema Club. I'll be completely honest. I was really worried that I wasn't going to have much notes or things to say, just because I enjoyed just watching the film. It's such a great, just feel good movie throughout the entire thing. It was really hard for me to separate my watching from my needing to actually review it and critique it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah, I was watching it too. I was watching it also. And I had my notes up in one half of my screen, and moving the other half, I was like, I don't want to write down notes. I just want to watch it.
Exactly. I was the same way. And so I suggest everybody that hasn't seen the film, if you're just coming to this podcast before watching the film, I guess I'm sorry because we've given everything away, but it is such a good movie. And even being this my probably fourth or fifth time through, I'm still getting stuff I didn't see before. And it's just as enjoyable this time around as it was before. And I will continue to watch it again and again and again. It is easily rewatchable in my opinion. So please go watch it. And with that, again, I want to say a huge thank you to you guys for coming on the episode. Before we go, I always want to give my guests a chance to shout out their socials, kind of let us know what's going on in your life so that we can follow you guys.
You can follow me, I guess. I got a business account on Instagram and Facebook. It's my last name, Cernitsky Media. Honestly, I just do a lot of wedding stuff on there, but I'll be posting some more personal stuff and fine art stuff on there within the near future. So if you're interested, I don't know, go ahead and just give it a look.
Yeah, and I'm also on Instagram at TMNT Gurney. And if you're in the Raleigh area in March, I'll be in a production of Snow White, an outdoor amphitheater at Raleigh Little Theater. So you can check that out. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
And as always, you can follow me at nick.fleeto.leach, Leach on Instagram, and Nick Leach on Facebook. And please, as always, join the Cinema Club Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/the Cinema Club TCC, and listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Podbean, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Please share this episode. Please share our podcast. Please invite your friends and family to join the club. I want to have as many people on this podcast as possible. Would love to hear your favorite films and share your favorite films for other people to see, because that's the whole point of this podcast. So thank you guys again so much for coming on the podcast. And as always, we will see you on the next one.